Cycling for me has never been about the bikes. They've only ever been the prerequisite tool. I do not see just a bike race, I see riders on heroic journeys and warriors doing battle. At one point, cycling was the most popular sport in Europe because newspapers told magnificent tales about epic races and crafted the great champions into legends. But with the advent of television, cycling lost some of its mystique, and that golden age of journalism and narration has perished. So now let us try to return some romance to the beautiful sport. Let us praise and give glory to phenomenal performances to be remembered for decades to come. Let us dwell on the moments that inspire and move us. Let us chronicle the rise and fall of heroes. Let us chart these life-changing journeys, these cycling odysseys. All right, welcome back to another episode of Cycling Odysseys. I'm your host, Patrick Santino. Today we are recapping Strade Bianche. Another great edition. Well, all right, great, memorable, extremely memorable edition. This will go down as, it's pretty great in that regard, I guess. But this thing's mostly going to speak for itself. But one thing I don't think I highlighted enough, and I somewhat regret, is the landscapes. I didn't talk about how beautiful it was this year, but it was. So, I don't know. There will be other opportunities, I guess. There will be more Strades to, what's a good word? It's not gloat over. Something over. Eye candy over. I don't know. Something like that. You know what I'm talking about. So, with that, let's just jump in and, this recap should tell the full story. Strade Bianche 2022, the dust settles on a Merckx-ian performance. The broadcast began with a mythical gust of wind with about 100 kilometers left in the classic, unofficially known as the Sixth Monument. The entire peloton was descending one of the many treacherous white Starato sectors, the loose gravel roads that give the race its name. As if that matter were not precarious enough to do wheel-to-wheel in a 150-man bunch, from the right of all the riders, the wind blew so fiercely it made all to the furthest right either lose their balance and bring down anyone around them, or made them veer left across the road and bring down anyone around them. It was one of the most bizarre crashes I had ever seen. A vast majority of the peloton hit the deck like dominoes or a house of cards, and for some, that was race already over. One of the most majestic and severe-looking of the crashes, well caught on camera, was Quick-Step's world champion musketeer Julian Alaphilippe. Not only did Big Al go head over handlebars into the grass, he continued to tumble down the slope. Of the favorites that got back up to push on, which was by no means all, Alaphilippe the musketeer was the worst for wear, and left himself a great chase to catch the bunch. But the Quick-Step Wolfpack huddled around Big Al, the world champion, who had successfully won this Strade race before. Alaphilippe made it back into the peloton and gave one of his Wolfpack teammates a heartwarming pat on the back for such a brave shepherding effort. And yet, after a 20 to 25 kilometer chase, how much would Big Al have in the tank when the decisive selections and race-winning moves would be made? Neither Mighty Ace was in attendance. Alpecen's Vanderpool is still building back up from injury. Jumbo's Van Aert is away riding the Paris-Nice the next day for the first time. Ineos's Tom Pidcock was due to ride as of a few days ago, but did not start. We are all well aware Ineos's Egan Bernal is still on the long road to recovery after the severe training crash. And alas, in that mythical gust of wind, Alpecen's underdog of underdogs, Michael Gogol, crashed out. Thus, out of last year's Strade Dream Selection 7, only Big Al the Musketeer and UAE's young Beowulf Crown King, Tadej Pogačar, were left. Yes, with less than 75 kilometers to go, Alaphilippe the Musketeer made it back to the peloton, which had the breakaway pegged to less than a minute ahead of them. With the breakaway very much in check, everyone in the peloton licked their wounds or saved their powder until someone else was ready to split the race and make some selections. And of course, everyone just had to leave that to the musketeer showman Julian Alaphilippe wearing the rainbow jersey right after the breakaway was caught with around 50 kilometers to go. Alaphilippe started stringing out the bunch and instigated probing attacks. Who was on their limit? Who had recovered best from the peloton pileup? Who was going well? A few were still hanging in there fighting fit. but only one stole the show. On the Santa Maria Strade sector, the last long and possibly the hardest sector of gravel, young Beowulf Crown King Tadej Pogačar began another immortal ride to add amongst his pantheon. Pogačar actually began his attack seated and without much pedaling. Wheeling and dealing, he was the wildest down a tricky gravel descent to get himself a 30 or 40 meter gap ahead of all the other race favorites, including Julien Alaphilippe the Musketeer. The gravel road then pitched up for the steepest and longest hill of that sector. Pogačar continued pressing on, and like last weekend at Omloop, where no one had an answer or a prayer for Van Aert's Bosberg attack, so today no one was within a metaphorical mile of Tadej Pogačar. Unlike last weekend, where Van Aert only had a 13-kilometer flat run-in to the finish, young Beowulf Crown King Tadej Pogačar still had a far-flung 49 kilometers to go, a full quarter of the race left ahead of him. But his engine was roaring. He had the bit between his teeth. He was eyeing another coveted prize. His hair was iconically sticking up through his helmet, his elbow was bloody, and his back was grass-stained and crusted with dust after hitting the deck in the Gust's crash. But still, Tadej Pogačar was 110% up for this. He was having fun. He was riding his bike in a beautiful place, winning in flying fashion a race everyone would love to add to their palmares. And behind, the others were not even being cagey or tactical. They simply were all just on their limit and did not have a prayer to follow. On that first steepest hill, in the course of 800 meters, Pogačar put 20 seconds into all the other favorites behind. The Santa Maria gravel sector went on for another 6 kilometers, and by then, Pogačar's gap was up to over a full minute. From there, with over 40 kilometers to go, it was already safe to just pack up and go home, for this race was done and dusted. Pun intended. If I were not a long-winded thinker, I would indeed stop here. But to list some details, Pogačar's gap at its greatest extent was out to about 90 seconds. By that point, everyone behind must have known they were racing for second, despite a relatively large peloton was still together. So, even as the gap came down from strategic accelerations over the gravel in the following last and shorter sectors, Tadej Pogačar was not in much jeopardy of getting caught even if he would have needed a bike change, which he did not. Of the chasers behind, Big Al the showman in the Rainbows ended up cracking, succumbing to injuries, bonking after heroic efforts, or not yet on his best form to be ready deeper into the spring, we do not know. His quick-step teammate Casper Asgreen, the alpha wolf of last year's Tour of Flanders, picked up the banner well for the Wolfpack. He clawed his way back to within a minute of Pogačar, leading all the other chasers over the last gravel sectors. But in the end, Asgreen finished only third behind the wily old green bullet, Alejandro Valverde, the Movistar patriarch. At 41 years of age, at least 2 seasons past when he stated he would retire, Valverde finished second at one of the few classics in his wheelhouse that has eluded him throughout his career. It was a phenomenal result for the old veteran, but was it still slightly bittersweet for him to come so close on his last chance to win Strade? Or is he simply happy to be the best of the rest as the rider of the generation rode away with Beowulfian strength and Merckx-ian style? Unfortunately, I am at a loss for vivid descriptions and ever greater superlatives to further recount this latest immortal ride from Tadej Pogačar, young Beowulf Crown King. It was as audacious as his 2021 Alpine Tour attack and as dominant as his Il Lombardia victory last fall. After last season, comparisons to all-time greats were becoming justified given Pogačar is still at such a tender age and already won so much. I dare say he's still fully eligible for the white jersey at this year's Tour de France. After winning the UAE Tour last weekend and thoroughly dominating this race today, Pogačar seems to not be skipping a beat coming into this season, and it seems it shall be another long season for any rivals that wish to beat him. Surely, not coincidentally, a clip at the beginning of GCN's broadcast had Eddy Merckx, the GOAT, daring to compare young Beowulf Pogačar to himself. For 50 years, Merckx has had to take questions from journalists about the next Eddy Merckx. Finally, here was Merckx picking out and comparing one to himself voluntarily. Merckx, like everyone, sees Pogačar as the complete package. He can climb and sprint and time trial. But most impressive of all for Merckx, who is surely speaking for most cycling fans, is Pogačar's audacity. He throws caution to the wind, undaunted by distance. He is prepared to risk it all. He is prepared to go big or go home. Not just because he wants to win, not just because he wants to put on a show, but because he loves to purely ride and race his bike. From 1969 to 1975, before the wheels metaphorically fell off and the literal punch in the gut took place, Eddy Merckx was so dominant, his winning percentage was probably better than most MLB Hall of Famers' batting averages. Dominant to the point no more, or at least nothing new, could be said when he won his Upteenth Classic or took multiple jerseys in the same Grand Tour. Dominant to the point that all suspense and intrigue were lost when Merckx attacked. So it was with this ride today that Tadej Pogačar entered such Merckx-ian thorough domination territory that little about this actual ride itself could be said afresh again. And so it is that young Beowulf Crowned King has now extended his reign south to the Tuscan hills. Just at this moment alone, he rules all the Frankish lands, Liège and Wallonia, all of Lombardy, the Terrarian and Adriatic coasts, and Slovenia. I need not even mention conquests and colonies held in the Middle East and on the American West Coast. At this point, Tadej Pogačar is a Benelux tour, a hypothetical West German stage race, and a Ligurian coast win away from having a kingdom that would resemble Charlemagne's Holy Roman Empire. Yes, indeed, Tadej Pogačar might rise to such greatness that he may outgrow Beowulf's hardy but comparatively humble hall and kingdom in the primordial dark forest and amidst the foaming salt seas of the harsh northern world. Yes, as he racks up classics, monuments, and Grand Tour victories, he shall soon be forging some sort of august imperial empire, the like of which has not been seen since the heyday of the esteemed Eddy Merckx the Cannibal. Truly, after this Merckx-ian performance today at Strade Bianche, none can question whether this is within the realm of possibilities. And perhaps, too, it shall become a reality sooner rather than later. For in but a fortnight's time, young Beowulf Tadej Pogačar shall already have his chance to subdue the Ligurian coast in the monument that runs across and down it to the Riviera town on the Italian border, San Remo. All right, full disclosure, I give this race a 7 out of 10 overall. I might have had it spoiled for me. It's very controversial whether the person accidentally spoiled for me or whether it was he assumed I had watched it and then was actually trying to talk about it. Anyways, I had assumed he spoiled it for me, so I knew Pogačar was going to win this whole time. I used basically my pick when I did the preview, and then I saw like a text with his name, and it's just crap, he's gonna win. Not crap, it's just crap, I know he's gonna win. That's part of the fun, is not knowing whatsoever, because I watched a couple hours late. that's the key, but anyways, mortal ride for Pogačar, pretty great to see, because he is, it's fun. And the way Eddy Merckx was talking about it, that GCN clip that they had, it was pretty funny, because he just said, watching Froome with Team Sky, they looked like PlayStation, way too calculated and mechanical. So he loves that Pogačar attacks, and he does attack. It's pretty sweet. Merckx seemed to think, or at least Rob Hatch seemed to think that Merckx seemed to think that's what makes Pogačar more likable to everybody. And I would probably agree. Pogačar is pretty fun. And more to come. And encroaching or encompassing Charlemagne's empire. Was reading about Charlemagne the other week, and connecting the dots. He really is close. He needs Piedmont. So to get Piedmont, he could win San Remo, I'd say. And then he's got all of France because of the Tour de France. Yeah, then he would just need the Benelux Tour would do it to get the Netherlands and all of Belgium. And then there is no German race, so we'll just give him a pass on that one. So pretty cool. Reconstructing an empire of bike racing. But I guess it's somewhat dependent that he wins Tirreno again this week. Not super dependent, though, because I think that would have been the Papal States, which I don't like. But anyways, those weren't really part of the Charlemagne Empire, I don't think. Anyways, whatever. Doesn't matter. All right, thanks for listening, everybody. Yeah, I guess we could end it here. Thanks for listening, everybody. Subscribe to the show, 5-star reviews. Yeah, thank you for listening. Vive le cyclisme.